When you carve a pumpkin, dress up as a ghoul, or bob for apples at a party, you're carrying on traditions that began thousands of years ago. Welcome to Samhain, the Celtic festival that gave us much of what we now call Halloween. Let's explore what it is, when it was celebrated, and why. We'll clear up some of the myths, talk about paganism, witches, and Satanism, share some fun facts, and even see how other cultures, like Mexico's Dia de los Muertos, honor the dead in their own unique way. Samhain, literally meaning summer's end, was one of the most important festivals in the ancient Celtic calendar. It marked the end of the harvest and the start of the dark half of the year, the long winter season, with the festival celebrated from October 31st to November 1st. But this wasn't just about farming. Samhain was believed to be a magical time where the veil between the living and the dead grew thin. People honoured ancestors, welcomed spirits, and prepared for the challenges of winter. In other words, it was part survival, part spiritual, and part spooky. Samhain happens halfway between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice, what's called a cross-quarter day. For ancient communities, this was the turning point. Crops were gathered, animals brought in, and anything that couldn't make it through the winter was sacrificed. And don't panic, that meant livestock, not relatives. Families lit huge bonfires on hilltops, believing that the flames protected them from wandering spirits. Food and drinks were left outside as offerings, and people played fortune-telling games using apples and nuts, predicting marriages, luck, and the year ahead. Here's where things get really interesting. Paganism as a whole was often painted as something dark, when really it was about the natural world and seasonal cycles. In fact, many modern pagans and many others still celebrate Samhain today, marking it as a spiritual new year. Witches and Wiccans were also caught in this wave of misunderstanding. Historically, the witch trials of Europe and the ever-infamous Salem witch trials in America targeted people, mostly women, accused of using magic or consorting with the devil. In truth, many of these so-called witches were herbalists, healers, or simply outsiders. With their cauldrons and pointed hats, witches eventually became a staple image of Halloween, often stripped of their harmless spiritual roots. Modern Wicca, which is a pagan religion, still embraces the same rituals today, tethering themselves to nature, the seasons, and respect for balance, and not a devil in sight. Over the centuries, these misunderstandings grew. As Christianity spread through Europe and later through colonization, practices that didn't fit the Christian worldview were often labelled as evil or satanic. From their perspective, these old traditions seemed to oppose their God, so redefining them made conversion easier. Over time, the word pagan became less about seasonal rituals and nature worship and more unfairly associated with devil worship, a connection that never truly existed. This is also where Satanism often gets entangled in the story. But here's the truth. Most modern Satanists don't even believe in a literal Satan. Instead, Satan is seen as a symbol of free thought, questioning authority, and standing up against oppression. Groups like the Satanic Temple focus on charity, community, and defending human rights. So while Samhain was wrongfully connected to evil in the past, both paganism and modern Satanism actually promote values like balance, compassion, and freedom. Before we move on, I do want to say this. This video is about exploring history, clearing up misconceptions, and celebrating the roots of different traditions in the spirit of Halloween. And the truth is, I can't exclude how certain ideas shaped misunderstandings in the past, but it is equally important to point out that most people today no longer see things this way. For many, those old fears and labels have been left behind, and what remains is a richer understanding of the different cultures and traditions you can find throughout the world. And while Samhain was happening in Celtic lands, other cultures had their own ways of honouring the dead. In Mexico, families celebrate Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, on November 1st and 2nd. This tradition, rooted in indigenous beliefs and later blended with Catholicism, is not about fear of spirits, but about welcoming them back joyfully. Families build colourful altars, called ofrendas, decorated with flowers, candles, food, and photos of loved ones. Marigolds, known as the flower of the dead, guide spirits home with their bright colours and scent. Unlike the spookiness of Halloween, Dia de los Muertos is a vibrant, joyful remembrance, a way to keep connections with family alive, even after death. Samhain gave us many of the traditions that we do still recognise today. In Ireland, people carved faces into turnips or beetroots to scare away spirits. When Irish immigrants arrived in America, pumpkins were notably bigger and much easier to carve, giving us the modern jack-o'-lantern. Trick-or-treating comes from an old practice called souling or guising. Children would often dress in costumes and go door to door, offering prayers or songs for the dead in exchange for food or coins. The disguises? They were meant to confuse or scare off spirits who might try to follow them home. In Celtic lore, cats were seen as mysterious, often connected to the spirit world. Later, in medieval Europe, black cats became closely linked with witches, which is why they are still seen as spooky today. And bats? They were drawn to the insects buzzing around Samhain bonfires, or bone fires, since people used to toss leftover animal bones into the flames as offerings. That eerie sight at night gave bats a reputation as omens, which later translated into vampiric legend. So the next time you see a glowing jack-o'-lantern or pick out your next costume, remember, these aren't just modern decorations and traditions. They're echoes of Samhain, a festival that celebrated nature, community, and the cycle of life and death. And around the world, from Ireland to Mexico, people still honour the dead in ways that bring meaning, remembrance, and joy. Modern Halloween may be about trick-or-treating, spooktacular events, and scary movies, but many of its roots lie in Samhain, contributing to the heartbeat thousands of years later.